Have you ever been hated, not for what you did, but for how calmly you didn't react? What if your silence was more powerful than any comeback? And what if staying unshaken is the most haunting revenge of all? Some smiles aren't smiles. They stretch across the face, but never reach the eyes. They cheer when you win, then whisper the moment you turn away. You didn't wrong them. You simply stayed composed, and that threatened the chaos inside them. They see your silence as weakness, your calm as surrender. But what they don't know is that stillness is power. You don't need to argue. You don't need to fight. You transform. Because the one who holds the center while others fall apart always holds the upper hand. Did I end this video? We'll explore 7 Stoic strategies to help you rise without saying a word to become untouchable, unshaken, and quietly powerful. That if you've ever been betrayed, judged, or quietly resented, this is for you. Let's begin. 1. Remain still in chaos. There will come a moment when someone tries to provoke you, not from truth, but from insecurity. Not always with anger, but with a smile that stings, or a joke laced with mockery. It's subtle, a jab wrapped in fake concern. But the goal is clear, to knock you off balance. And in that moment, you face a quiet choice: react or remain. The Stoics made their choice long ago. When chaos shows up wearing someone else's bitterness, the strongest action is no action at all. Stillness is not fear. It's control, that it's refusing to spill your emotions for others to play with, that it's not emptiness. It's mastery. Epictetus said, "It is not he who reviles you who insults you, but your opinion that these things are insulting." The wound only lands if you let it in. The jab only stings if you open the gate. Your calm? That's your armor. And your silence, when chosen, is sharper than any reply. Did I once watch this unfold in a boardroom? A man was publicly called out by a colleague, calculated, cruel, meant to humiliate. He didn't blink. He looked up, nodded, went back to his notes. No defense. No excuse. No reaction. And in that silence, the attacker shrank. Because stillness in the storm is unshakable. His power wasn't in what he said, but in what he refused to give away. This isn't about pretending you're unaffected. It's about learning to choose what affects you. Not every insult is worth your energy. Not every attack needs a reply. Not every moment deserves your voice. When you built the inner fortress of self-awareness, you begin to see through people, their tone, tactics, their need for drama. You realize their aggression isn't power. It's performance, that a desperate plea to be seen. And the most painful thing you can do to someone like that is to show them they don't matter. Because here's the truth. Chaotic people feed on reaction. They provoke you because your silence reminds them of what they can't control, not just in you, but in themselves. They bait you with gossip, with mind games, with manipulation. But when you give them nothing, no anger, no defense, no energy, they collapse under the weight of their own chaos. Stillness, when chosen, is not indifference, that it's dominance. Stoicism doesn't ask you to kill emotion, it asks you to master it. So it serves you, not sabotages you. Imagine a still lake. Throw a rock in, it ripples, then calms. Now imagine a storming lake. Every pebble just adds to the chaos. That's most people, always turbulent inside. But you're the still water. Every insult becomes a ripple, noticed, but never allowed to state as, oh, how do you build that kind of presence? Start small. Next time someone pokes at your calm, pause. They don't explain. Don't match their tone. Just breathe. Let the moment pass through you like wind through leaves. And ask yourself, what would the weaker version of me do? And how can I choose better? That single pause becomes a habit. That habit becomes your shield. And here's something most don't admit: people fear what they can't disturb. Your stillness exposes their storm. Your peace mirrors their insecurity. Your silence reminds them They've lost access to your energy. That's why they poke, that it's not about what you did, that it's about what your composure reveals in them. This isn't just about dramatic showdowns, that it's in the messages you don't return, the invitations you decline without reason, the accusations you don't bother to refute. Every time you don't react, you reclaim power. Because the most disciplined warriors don't just train for battle, they train for patience. The man who only moves when necessary cannot be manipulated. He doesn't chase, doesn't flinch, doesn't explain. Let it spiral, and let it all collapse without your participation. You stand still, silent, free, because you've already learned the truth they can't grasp. Real strength isn't loud, that it doesn't beg to be seen. Next time someone tries to shake your foundation, remember, only what's loose can be shaken, and you've tightened the bolts of your spirit. Once you've mastered the art of not reacting, you begin to starve their relevance, and your silence becomes not just protection, but power. 2. Starve their relevance. One of the most powerful responses to those trying to drag you down is not to fight back, but to rise, not by hiding, but by elevating. You don't need to build walls. You build altitude. You ascend to a level where their words don't echo, where their games fall flat, and where their provocations can't reach. Starve them of your energy. Engrave that into your mind. Because in the world we live in today, attention is currency. And for the petty, the bitter, and the jealous, your attention is their oxygen. Take it away, and they suffocate. They don't want closure. They want proof that they still affect you. They don't seek peace. They seek a sign that they still matter. They poke. They prod. They bait you with passive aggression, with subtle digs, with questions that sting more than they seek answers. They want to see you twitch. They want to see you flinch. Because even your anger is validation that they still exist in your mind. But when you stay calm, when you walk past them like they're furniture in a room you've already outgrown, you take away their stage. You remove the audience. You deny them the drama. You strip them of the only thing they crave: relevance. Marcus Aurelius said it simply and powerfully. You always own the option of having no opinion. That is true power. You don't need to weigh in. You don't need to explain. You don't even need to notice. The world can spin in chaos, but yours doesn't have to. Picture this. You're at a formal gathering. Across the room, you spot a familiar face. Someone who once betrayed you. They lied, spread rumors, tried to turn others against you. You make eye contact. They smirk faintly, mockingly. They drop a comment into a nearby conversation, just loud enough for you to hear. Your old self tightens. Your pride rises. You want to respond, to correct, to reclaim your dignity. But instead, you take a slow breath. You look through them, as if they were a blurry figure in a dream you no longer care to remember. Maybe a small nod. Not from respect, but release. And then you turn away. That moment is a sword at a clean, sharp strike made of silence. Because silence, when chosen with clarity, is not weakness, it is precision. It is control. It is power. Refined, here's the deeper truth. Your energy is sacred. Every time you spend it on someone who hasn't earned it, you dilute your own power. Every time you argue with someone who isn't interested in truth, only attention you hand them, the control they never deserved. The Stoics knew this. They didn't teach avoidance. They taught self-possession, the kind of inner command that doesn't run from the world, but moves through it with clarity and intention. Seneca wrote, "What progress have I made? I have begun to be a friend to myself." That's what starving them of your energy is really about. It's not silence out of spite, it's silence out of alignment. You choose peace over pride, growth over gossip, direction over distraction. Yes, it will bother them. They'll grow louder, throw sharper jabs. They may even pretend to be over it just to bait you back into the past. But the one who has mastered their energy, they see it all. They don't flinch. They don't explain. They observe, calm, clear, untouchable. This isn't apathy, it's self-respect, and it's the unshakable understanding that not everyone deserves access to your mind, your focus, or your time. Because in the end, those who try hardest to hurt you are often the ones most terrified to watch you rise without them. And the cruelest truth you can ever show them is that you did, without a sound, without a fight, without them. 3. Forgive like a fortress. Forgiveness. To many, it sounds soft, passive, even weak. But in Stoic philosophy, forgiveness is not surrendered, it's strategy. An inner war that ends not in defeat, but in sovereignty. Most people get forgiveness wrong. They think it means excusing betrayal, letting someone off the hook. But the wise know, forgiveness isn't about them, that it's about reclaiming you. Because when you hold a grudge, who suffers? Not them, they've moved on. They sleep peacefully. Meanwhile, you rehearse the pain like a ritual. You drink the poison, hoping they'll feel it. But all it does is burn you. The Stoics saw this trap. They knew resentment is a chain, one that binds your spirit to the offender. What do? You cut the cord, not with rage, not with revenge, but with clarity. You no longer get to live in my mind, that I release you, not because you deserve it, but because I do. Forgiveness doesn't say it's okay. It says it's over. That's when something shifts. You stop feeding what broke you and start being fueled by what's building you. You no longer carry the story of the wound, you carry the wisdom it gave you. Musonius Rufus once said, "It's not enough to refrain from harming others. We must also not wish them harm." That's hard, especially when they meant to hurt you. When they lied, laughed, and left you standing in the ashes of their betrayal. But this is a battlefield. And the one who forgives without permission or apology is the one who wins. Because the most terrifying thing to your enemies is a person who refuses to hate them back. Why? Because when you stop trying to make them understand, stop replaying the hurt, stop needing closure, you become untouchable, a fortress. Still, silent, unreachable. Forgiveness at its highest form is like a mountain. It doesn't move to meet the storm. It just stands, letting the wind exhaust itself against stone. Let me tell you a story. A woman I once knew was sharp, respected, trusted, until her business partner, someone she called a friend, stole not just her money, but her name. He spread lies, filed lawsuits, destroyed her credibility. She lost friends, stability, and trust in the world. Years passed, but she wore her pain like armor. Every win felt tainted. Every conversation circled back to him. She thought justice would bring peace, but even after the court ruled in her favor, something still rotted inside. Until one morning, over coffee, she said, "I don't want to hate him anymore. It's costing me too much." That moment changed her life. She stopped tracking his downfall, stopped making him the villain in her healing. She didn't forgive him because he earned it. She forgave because she deserved peace. And you could see it in the lightness of her step, the softness in her voice, the quiet in her eyes. That's what forgiveness really is. It's not forgetting, not excusing, not pretending it didn't happen. It's saying, "I will no longer pay emotional rent for a building someone else burned down." You cancel the subscription, withdraw your attention, take your power back from a past that only lives if you feed it. And that kind of forgiveness, quiet, deliberate, final, it haunts more than any revenge. They expect anger, they expect collapse, but you rise gracefully, powerfully, without them. The Stoics never said, "Ignore the pain." They said, "Face it, learn from it, then let it go," not as a curse, but as a scar, healed, silent, and unbleeding. That's power. Real forgiveness doesn't come with a speech. It doesn't ask for witnesses. It doesn't even require them to know. It's a private declaration. I release this because I will not rot. I forgive because I'm building something sacred, and poison has no place in it. When you remove their last weapon, your attention, the war ends. not because they surrendered, but because you left the battlefield behind. Want to truly break your enemies? Don't fight them. Outgrow them, but don't argue. Outlast, but don't beg for fairness. Find freedom instead. Let your silence speak the sentence. Let your growth become the echo. And when the world sees that you carried betrayal not with bitterness, but with dignity, they won't see weakness, that they'll see someone rare, someone who can say, I've walked through fire, but I did not become ash. I release you. Not for you, but for me. If you've been deeply wronged, don't waste your life trying to make it fair. It may never be fair. But you can still be free. Choose that. Choose the kind of forgiveness that doesn't shrink from pain but transforms it. Because when your peace becomes stronger than your pain, you don't just survive, you evolve. They want chaos. You give them silence. And that silence, it echoes longer than any scream ever could. 4. Outlast their hate. Hatred is loud. It burns hot, messy, and fast. It craves reaction, demands attention, and feeds on chaos. But here's what hate doesn't understand. Fire dies when it runs out of fuel. Hate needs constant feeding your attention, your anger, your collapse. But while they burn fast, you endure. That's where true power lies, not in striking back, but in lasting longer. The Stoic doesn't fight the flame. He watches it exhaust itself while he builds, brick by brick. In silence, they want to see you. Stumble, they wait for cracks in your discipline. But you're not playing their game. In fact, you've left the arena. You're building something long-term, something unshakable. You move like time, deliberate, precise, unstoppable. Seneca said, how much better to heal a wrong than to avenge one. That wasn't softness. It was strategy, focus, mastery. A real story. There was a young man, quiet, consistent, deeply intentional, that he skipped the parties. Stayed late at work. His peers mocked him, whispered behind his back. Uptight. Arrogant. Fake, they said. But he never bit the bait. He kept showing up, kept building. A decade later, they're still talking, still chasing weekends, still performing. And him, he's built a life they can't even access, not because he's better, but because he stayed focused when they couldn't. That they're still fighting ghosts. He's already left the battlefield. This is stoicism in action. To ignore the noise, to anchor yourself in discipline, to know that rage fades, but purpose compounds. Hate is loud, but short-lived. It's all flash, no foundation. And while it burns out, you rise, not with noise, not with fireworks, but with quiet, unshakable presence. You build a life like a fortress, each choice measured, each breath intentional. No need for applause, no thirst for revenge, only the slow, steady fire of becoming who you're meant to be. And one day they'll look up and realize they can't reach you anymore, not because you disappeared, but because you evolved. They stayed behind. You walked into the future. That's how you win, not with revenge, but with irrelevance. You prove that nothing outside you can define your path. You are unshaken, unowned, unbroken. So let them mock, let them lie, let them try. You're not here to react. You're here to remain. And in that stillness, you rise. Their voices fade. Their presence vanishes. And all that's left is silence. The fire they tried to start in you, it never caught. But the fire you built within yourself, it never dies. So when you finally outlasted their hate, don't look back to say, I told you so. Just keep rising, because your evolution is the final sentence, and it needs no punctuation. 5. Rise without words. True transformation doesn't arrive with noise. It rises like the sun, quiet, certain, unstoppable. And it begins with you. You become your own compass. You sharpen your focus. You raise your standards, not to impress, not to prove, but because who you are no longer fits where you're going. And as you grow, it disrupts those who only knew you small. When you stop chasing validation, when you read more, speak less, and replace noise with direction, they'll feel it. They'll say, you've changed. And you'll smile, because you have, not to hurt them, not to rise above them, but because staying the same would have meant betraying your own evolution. And what did you do in response? Nothing. You didn't explain, didn't justify, didn't send a final message to make them understand. You just rose one focused step at a time. And eventually, they couldn't reach you, not because you shut them out, but because your life had risen too high in clarity and purpose for their noise to echo that far. That's what real elevation is, not wealth, not status, but a deep internal grounding that doesn't flinch when misunderstood and doesn't shrink just to stay relatable. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." You don't need to post your breakthroughs. You don't need to explain your glow to people committed to misunderstanding your fire. Because when your life becomes evidence of your growth, your silence becomes undeniable. Here's the paradox. The quieter you become, the more they notice. Even the ones who doubted you, they'll hear of your progress. They'll see the distance. And they'll realize the version of you they once dismissed no longer needs their approval. And that realization will haunt them more than anything you could have said. We live in a world obsessed with showing, posting, reacting. But the Stoic doesn't perform. He builds. He doesn't pause to explain the blueprint. He lays the bricks, quietly, one by one, until one day, those who once judged look around and realize you're no longer in their story. You're not playing a role in their narrative. You're writing your own, not because you're cold, but because you're focused, not because you don't care, but because you care too much about what you're becoming to be pulled back into petty noise. So when they ask, why didn't you defend yourself? Why didn't you respond? You just smile. Because you're not there anymore, you've stepped into a new chapter, one where your energy serves your purpose, not your ego, where silence is not absence, but unshakable presence. Let them whisper. Let them speculate. Let them wonder how someone they tried to break became unreachable. If that's not arrogance, that's ascension. You didn't rise to be seen. You rose to become. And becoming doesn't need an audience. Let that be your message. You don't need to prove you're rising. Rise so clearly they can no longer deny it, even if you never say a word. And now that your silence speaks louder than their screams, there's a deeper power waiting to be claimed, not just by rising, but by removing your energy completely. Because when they can no longer feed on your attention, you don't just become distant. You become untouchable. 6. Let discipline speak. There's something quietly devastating, even humiliating to a person filled with hate when the one they tried to break becomes better without them. Not louder, not angrier, not vengeful, just better. More disciplined, more focused, more refined, and not for the world to see, but because self-respect demanded it. You don't chase revenge. You don't say their name. You don't even need to mention what happened. Instead, you build a life so ordered, so precise, so grounded in principle, that it reflects back everything they lack. And that mirror, it doesn't need sound, it doesn't scream. It simply reveals, here's what most people don't realize: your enemies don't always want to destroy you with fire. Sometimes, they just want to see you quietly unravel, to drift off course, to stop showing up for yourself, to quit the book, to skip the gym, to lash out online, to rot slowly in the shadows of your own potential. They don't need a public failure. They're content watching you decay privately, because that to them proves their damage worked. But what if you didn't give them that? What if, instead of spiraling, you built? You got up every morning not to prove anything, but because you refused to rot in the same soil they live in. You trained, you read, you created. While they partied, you planned. While they gossiped, you built. While they slept in, you sharpened your soul. And slowly your life begins to transform, not into something loud, but into something undeniable. Not because you became arrogant, but because you became structured. That structure, that's what breaks them quietly. Completely. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." Those aren't just poetic words, they're code. When someone betrays you, you don't respond by lowering yourself. You respond by rising so far, so fast, so focused, they can't even describe the difference anymore. They insult, you study, they mock. You train, they post, you produce, they brag. You build. Let me give you a real story. There was a man I knew, a dreamer, a builder, full of quiet ambition. He got trapped in a relationship that mocked his drive, belittled his growth, made him feel small for wanting more. When it ended, she made sure the world saw her glow up. New photos, new partners, subtle jabs. Rumors meant to sting. Everyone expected him to spiral. To defend himself, collapse. But he didn't. He got quiet. He moved cities, cut the noise, woke up at 5 a.m., started training, built a business, rebuilt his body, reforged his spirit. No posts, no rants, no attempts to explain. Just quiet. Relentless. Discipline. 3 years later, he's unrecognizable, not just in physique, but in presence. The people who laughed at him, they don't even make eye contact now. Not because he changed out of spite, but because he changed in spite of everything. That's stoicism. That's power. Discipline is more than routine. It's rebellion against chaos. It's order in the face of disorder. But it's choosing alignment over attention. You don't build a disciplined life to show off. You build it to become free. Free from the drama, free from the noise, free from the version of yourself that once needed to be seen, needed to be liked, needed to be understood. Because once you have discipline, you have your power back. And when that happens, no rumor can shake you. No betrayal can define you. No insult can reach you. Here's the irony. When you finally find peace, when your discipline starts bearing fruit, they'll come back with one final phrase. You've changed. And you'll smile, because yes, you did, but not to impress them, not to hurt them. You change because you refuse to stay broken, because the pain didn't harden you, it forged you. And now, you don't need to clap back, you don't need to react, you just let your structure speak, let your routine reply, let your results become your reputation. Let your life speak in sentences only the disciplined can understand. Because in the world of stoicism, the loudest answer is often the one that never needs to be spoken. 7. Let time judge them. They'll say, "You've changed," as if that's a bad thing, as if staying broken would have somehow been noble. But you won't argue, you won't defend, you'll just smile, because their judgment isn't a reflection of you, it's a reflection of their refusal to grow. While they cling to old wars, you're elsewhere training, building, evolving. That is the real power of living well, that it's not proving them wrong. It's becoming so focused, so rooted in your mission. Their opinion doesn't even fit in your schedule anymore. You rise in silence. You outwork their memory. You become the man they tried to destroy, but stronger, sharper, unshakably better. So stay your course. Stay disciplined, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. You're not here to win petty arguments. You're here to earn something far more valuable, your own respect. And that comes from choosing structure over chaos, commitment over comfort, growth over gossip. Every new habit you build is a brick in the wall between who you were and who they tried to keep you as. And when that wall is high enough, you won't even hear their voices anymore. Let them talk. Let them fade. You're busy becoming undeniable. And once your discipline has carried you beyond their reach, there's only one thing left to do: step into time's rhythm and let it judge you both. You don't need to chase revenge. You don't need to stand on every hill defending your name. You don't need to refute every rumor or correct every whisper. Time will do it for you. Time is the great equalizer. It humbles those who walk in arrogance and honors those who walk in discipline. People who hate you, they want one thing: immediate proof that their efforts worked. They look for cracks. They monitor your emotions. They want to see you stumble, fast fall, publicly break, visibly. But the Stoics knew a different truth. If evil be spoken of you, and it be true, correct yourself, that if it be false, laugh at it. Epictetus, that's not passivity. That's clarity, that's mastery. Because either way, true or false, Your energy is better spent building than explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Time unmasks everyone. It peels back the charm, the lies, the posturing, the fake smiles and curated images. It reveals who was authentic and who was just loud, who was building and who was bluffing. Think of a building under construction. For months, even years, it looks like chaos, scaffolding, dust, doubt. People walk by and assume it's going nowhere. They mock, they guess, they point fingers, but the architect, he doesn't stop to explain the blueprint, he just keeps building. And then one day, the scaffolding comes down, and the structure stands in silence, complete, unshakable. And the same people who doubted it now stare at it in awe. That's what your life becomes when you stay the course and let time speak for you. Let me tell you a true story. There was a woman, brilliant and composed, constantly undermined by jealous colleagues. They whispered, excluded her, mocked her calm as weakness, assumed her silence was softness. But she didn't react. She didn't retaliate. She didn't complain. She learned, produced, refined, and over time, the tides turned, leadership changed, priorities shifted, and one by one, those who schemed against her fell, not by force, but by their own flaws, their own words catching up to them. And her, she rose. Not because she demanded it, not because she manipulated her way up, but because she became impossible to ignore. That's what Stoicism teaches us. The truth doesn't need to arrive on your schedule. But when it comes, it doesn't need to shout. Time reveals everything. Time destroys every lie. And time exalts every soul who stayed disciplined when the world told them to break. Let them talk. Let them mock. Let them underestimate. You stay on your path. You keep building. You keep becoming. Because in the end, the ones who stand tallest are the ones who stayed focused the longest. And when the dust settles, it won't be your words they remember, it'll be your life. They thought your silence was surrender. They mistook your stillness for weakness. But what they never realized was that while they chased noise, you were building depth. While they spun in circles, you moved forward, one quiet step at a time. They thought you'd fall apart. Instead, you fell into alignment, and every insult they threw, it just echoed into the empty space you left behind. Every attempt to drag you back only revealed that they had never moved forward. Now, years later, you haven't just survived them. You've outgrown them, outpaced them, outlasted every lie with your living truth. Your silence became a monument. Your discipline became your defense. Your restraint became your reputation. You didn't strike back. You didn't explain. You didn't throw stones. You simply walked forward, slow, still, sovereign. And then, one day, time turned around and told the truth. Why then? You didn't need to say, I told you so. Because everyone already knew. This is what it means to live with dignity, to trust that storms pass, that chaos fades, and that character always outlasts noise. You don't need applause. You don't need revenge. You just need to remain. Let them speak. Let them twist. Let them underestimate that you're not playing for moments, that you're playing for legacy. And time always reveals who was real and who was only loud. So keep your head down. Keep your heart clear. Keep your steps aligned. And let time humble them not with your hands, but with their own weight. Because the war they started, it ends not when you strike back, but when they realize they're still swinging in the dust, and you're not even in the arena anymore. You never needed to win with noise. You only needed to endure with purpose. And now your legacy speaks for itself. Let this be your final lesson. You don't rise by tearing others down. You rise by becoming someone they can no longer reach. And the higher you rise in truth, in clarity, in stillness, the quieter their voices become, that's how you overcome hate. That's how you transcend betrayal. Not with rage, not with revenge, but with unshakable purpose and the patience to let time speak when you do not. There's a strength that makes no sound, it doesn't boast, it doesn't broadcast, it simply stands, it watches, it waits. And in silence it grows. That is the strength you've been cultivating, one quiet choice at a time. You've learned not every battle is worth entering. Not every insult deserves your attention. Not every storm deserves your presence. Because your peace is sacred, it is not to be gambled, it is to be guarded, refined, respected. We don't stay still because we're weak. We stay still because we've seen where true power comes from. It doesn't come from proving, it comes from becoming. And becoming takes discipline. It takes restraint. It takes the kind of courage that walks forward while the world tries to pull you back. The world will test you. It will bait you with drama, tempt you with conflict, challenge you to prove your worth. But you don't need to take the bait. You've already shown your strength by not being moved. Let them wonder why you don't respond. Let them feel the silence that used to belong to your reaction. Because you don't live there anymore, that you've risen. Not louder, not flashier, stronger. And that strength speaks for itself. This is Stoic wisdom in action. You don't need to fight to win. You just need to walk forward one step, one breath, one silent victory at a time. And if this message reminded you of who you're becoming, of the calm power already growing inside you, then stay on this path. Subscribe if you want to keep building that clarity, that inner stillness, that unshakable self. Because this is not the end, that it's only the beginning of a deeper kind of strength. Before you go, leave a comment with just 2 words. Walk forward. Say it to yourself. Say it in silence. Let it echo in your mind whenever the world calls you back into noise. Because that phrase isn't just a direction, that it's a declaration. You don't need to destroy others to rise. You rise by becoming someone they can never touch again.